Yo, okay, I am back here today. I wanted to talk about inversions. We had gone over some music theory stuff in previous videos. I went over chord scales from the major scales. I also went over, what chords make up the set scales. And there's other people that wanted me to go into videos about using chord progressions to kind of write out a track. But I kind of wanted to maybe just touch on inversions first. I feel like this is kind of important and can help a lot because I mean, really, when it comes down to like once you learn the chords, you can really go online and just find extremely common chord progressions and kind of write them out from there. But will help that as well as kind of understanding how inversions work so that you can lead your tracks better, or what's called like voice leading for singers. And also just if you're a piano player too, it's really important because it allows you to not move your hands as much. So I'm going to kind of go over inversions and then show you an example, and we can kind of go from there. I think this will really help, especially if you kind of have, I guess, how to put chords together. It can kind of, because you can create new moods and stuff as well. Also, I'm still using this blue microphone right now. I can't get this other mic to work, so hopefully it sounds fine. I also will be, I just bought a bunch of parts. I'm about to build like a really ridiculous PC. I'm getting away from Mac. I'm just over it. So I'll probably be able to start like streaming in video at the same time as I do this, where I can kind of have like a camera on me, and I could probably start doing more interesting stuff now that's not just me on the computer. So I'm kind of excited about that. Probably the next few weeks I'll have that done. Waiting on the parts, it's probably going to be like 2 weeks. So also I have a bunch of sounds that I made for by Patreon this week. They're pretty cool. A lot of them are really gritty. I'm getting into like really gritty sounds. So if you kind of like want to get on those, you can subscribe to my Patreon. I'd really appreciate it. That was a long rant there, but so let's get into the topic. I need to open up the preview here. So I have this. I just copied it from a book that I have. I didn't want to, I was going to write it out and I was like, screw it. I already fucking have it here. So why not? So basically chords are made up of thirds, which is what we've gone over already. And this is, when they're made up in thirds, they're kind of called intervals, the intervals of thirds, and they're tertial. So that like when a chord, if you see a C, like right here is a C major. If you can't read sheet music, we're just gonna go to here. I'll probably do this. So as we went over before, you have your C, which is your root, and then you have your major third here, and you have your fifth, which is also made up of thirds. It's called perfect fifth. So that is like what a normal chord would look like when it's all made up of tertial intervals. This also applies to sevenths. You'd have your root, your major third, perfect fifth, and your major seventh for at least a C major 7. So those are also tertial, because there's a difference between triads and sevenths and how the intervals change when you have them inverted. So to go into this, triads, like I said, are made up of thirds. And they have 2 types of inversions. They have a first inversion and a second inversion, and it'll basically eventually just, when you start moving back up, it goes back to just a higher C that's in the correct order. So as far as sheet music goes, when you have the inversions, they're going to be, they have it highlighted here pretty brightly, but it's called, the correct term is like non-tertial. They're non-tertial intervals. And triads actually make a non-tertial interval of a fourth. So if we look here, you have, that would be a fourth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. Right? 1, 2, yeah, 5 half steps basically up a keyboard. Because when you, like I said, when you normally do it, they're made up in thirds. And when you start going up, they start having weird gaps there. And this is like, if you read sheet music, you kind of have to learn this, is that when the gap is there, the top note of the gap is always going to be the root. So that's how you figure out what chord it actually is. Because this is still a C, it's just a different phrasing basically of the same chord. It's the first inversion. And then you go up, and there's the second inversion. So if you go through this, I'll actually play it on here. It might be a little bit, it's going to be easier to see like this. So it's maybe a little bit confusing with these. So let's go here. I'm sorry guys, I should have wrote this out. I guess I didn't really, I thought it would be fine with what I had already. So this is your normal one. This would be your first inversion. So what I can actually do with this, which is kind of nice, but I'm not going to do it that way. So you have your C, your E, and your G. So what you're going to basically do is take this C and you're going to move it up to the C above it. So now you have E, G, and C up here. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a quick key, but I can move my C up there, and that's going to be the first inversion. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a gap there of a fourth, and the top note is the C. So that means that is your root. So you still have a C major chord there. For the next one, we're going to move over, and you're going to take the bottom note again. So you have your E, your G, and your C. We're going to take the E this time, and we're going to move it up to the next E, which is going, let me do that. I'm just going to hit shift up arrow, and that is going to be, so you have your interval of a fourth here still. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's still your root. So you still have a C, you have an E, and then you have your G, which would normally be up here if it was in root position. So that's your second interval. And then basically it's just you're gonna do the same thing again, bring it over, and if you take your G up, you're back to like a root position C. So you have your root position, first inversion, second inversion, and you can do the same thing. You can go backwards and basically, you know, we'll move this out of the way here. So you have your C, and this time you could go down first, and let's say you're going into your second inversion basically first if you wanted to go in the opposite direction or whatnot. So that's kind of how inversions work for triads. It's the same exact concept with sevenths. The only difference is it gets a little more, I think, complicated visually for the viewer, at least with written sheet music. And maybe if you find seventh chords very intimidating, then this could be a little more daunting, because there are actually 3 inversions, and because there's more notes, it actually creates an interval of a second rather than a fourth. So it can be a little more difficult to see. But basically it's the same concept though, where there's a non-tertial interval there, which is basically right here. I wonder if I can zoom into this. Yeah, cool. See, there's non-tertial interval. So the top note again is still going to be the root, which right here is a C. We started on a C major, and we're going to shift the C up, and this is going to be your C still. So you basically kind of would start like, if you in your brain, if you want to figure it out, you're like, okay, well I know this is the root. So this is a C. And then, okay, this is an E, this is a G, and this is a B. So that's a C major 7. So, and then basically from there, it's the same concept, but we'll do it on this because it'll probably be easier, but we'll just go over it here first, you know, this time. So we started here, and now we're basically going to shift up our E up here, and it looks like even a little bit crazier, but again, where's your non-tertial interval? It's right here. So you have this note, and it's creating the second. So the top note is still your root. So you're like, okay, I have a C, and I have an E, and I have a G and a B. So okay, it's still a C major, but it's a second inversion, etc. You get the idea. Why don't we do it on here so it makes a little more sense? Because I guess I could see it being pretty daunting to watch. If you can't read sheet music, it's probably very confusing right now. So, but hopefully I did a good explanation of it and it makes sense. Let's see, what am I doing? There we go. Put it up to our B. Okay, so we have our root position here. I don't need that. So that's our C major. And I hope this microphone isn't making too much noise by sitting on my desk like this. But like I said, when I get up my new stuff, I'll spruce it up a bit for you guys and make it, you know, nicer. So what are we gonna do here? Okay, we're going to take our C, because we're in root position, and we're going to shift the C up to the next C. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my quick key because it's easier. So now we have an interval of a second here. And still you have a C major. It's just this is the first inversion of it. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go through these a little quicker because the concept is the same. So this time we're going to take our bottom note again, and we're going to shift it up to the next E, basically. So now we're on E3. We still have our interval of a second. The higher note of the non-tertial interval, again, is the root. So this is our root, C. So we have our C, we have our E, we have our G, and our B. We still have a C major 7. It's just a different inversion. So let's play it through. And then lastly, we have our third inversion. So this time we're going to take our G. Our G is going to go up, and this is our third inversion. I can make this longer, I may as well. And then basically we copy this again. We're going to take our B up, boom, and we're back to our root position. So you have your first inversion, second inversion, first inversion, root, first inversion, second inversion, your third inversion, and your root position. I guess now it's like, okay, well, what is the importance of this? Like, why do I need to know this? Does it really matter? Why can't I just play the chords how they normally are? Well, it can be a really useful tool for changing the mood of your song, for one. I know it's the same chord, but it can have a new mood, especially if with dance music, for one, because if you say Flux Pavilion, like he's an example that I can use. Like he's said he studied, a lot of theory, etc. And he would build his chord progressions like this, and then he would just basically start splitting up these notes into different synths. Like maybe the C was the bass, and then this would be a pad or something, or you would build it. Maybe he would just do an E chord for the pad or whatever. And then maybe this was like a high end note. By maybe doing a different inversion right there already, you get a new mood for it. And maybe this time the bass is an E or something instead. But not only that, it's important too with, I guess, like I said, if you're playing instruments, it makes the movement of the song more cohesive and subtle. Like jumping up and down the keyboard can be great if that's what you want. But it also it can be very jerky. It's also really important because this helps singers. Like if you're working with singers, it's like voice leading for them. It's going to be hard for a singer to maybe jump from a C all the way up to the the A minor. It could be difficult for them. So in doing this and using this technique, you're kind of bringing it down. I guess I haven't played this through. I'll play this first. So we have a chord, but those are the reasons. Those are the main reasons that you would use it for voice leading, and also just for your playing. Also, it makes it smoother as a musician. So let's go to a chord progression I put together. It's a simple progression. We have the first, we're in the key of C major, so we have a C major, we have your 6 chord, which is an A minor. We have a 3 chord, which is an E minor, and then we go to the 4 chord, which is a F major. So we play through. It sounds nice, and it sounds fine, completely fine. Another thing you can use this for, though, is it can add variation to your music. That's a good thing too, is that you can keep playing that same chord progression. I mean, if you listen to pop music, it's the same fucking chord progressions. If you look at a Lana Del Rey song, it is the same exact chord progression through the entire song, verse, chorus, bridge, all of it. But they're doing a lot of modulating, which is deeper topics, but they're also, they're maybe using inversions that can create new moods and patterns in the music. So if we look at this one, we have our C major and root position. This time I took the second inversion of A by bringing down my E. It brings a little bit closer to the groove, like to the other notes, less movement with your hands, and also yeah, that's it. So I didn't really move the other ones. I didn't feel like I needed to. You could, even if you wanted to move the C up, I don't think it sounds as good or has enough impact. I kind of like it on the bottom and then moving up, but that, it's a taste thing. It depends with electronic music. Like the E might sound better in the bass, but then again, though, you have a problem with the bass kind of not really changing through this chord progression, which could be really boring. So, having that there, you might even want to move this E up. And maybe you want to move, let's see, whoops. We'll just play it through first like this. So this is the, adjusted one that has the actual inversion. So I should probably play the original first. Cool. And then we'll go to this one. Let's try inverting this one. See, okay, great example. It's a nice variation. I think that sounds way fucking better. Maybe let's try an inversion in this one too. The B gets a little muddy, but it might sound good with a synth. You know, the piano. This is a really shitty stock Ableton piano. So, I mean, if you have Contact, it might sound a little bit better, which I do. But I just figured to use the shitty stock one. So that's pretty much it. I think this is a really good tool for anyone to use. Even like, it's a very strong way to go about creating variation in your music, and also it's going to help you a lot working with vocalists. Like, knowing this can be very, very helpful for you if a vocalist is struggling. You could be like, well, here, let me try to move the chord progression a little bit to maybe work with your voice better. So that's it for this video. Recap again, this shit's great. Learn it, it'll help you. My Patreon, subscribe, I really appreciate it. I'm going to be putting more presets up. I put like 5 up every couple weeks. I want to do more. I want to maybe start getting into doing MIDI loops and stuff too. But I'm just kind of really working on developing. I do a lot of sound design, but usually it's for my own stuff, and like doing it and creating it and then putting it out there is kind of a different, it's weird to try to do. You kind of like put more pressure on yourself. So I think some of the sounds I put out are very interesting. Like, I would use them in my own production. So, you know, maybe check out my Patreon. The links will be below. And in the next few weeks, I'll hopefully have a better setup. You'll actually maybe get to see me when I'm talking, and we can do some stuff, you know, outside of the computer. I could play with my push 2 or something like that. Cool. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good rest of your day. Thanks.